Today, information and communication technologies are considered as an essential part of higher education. In this session, we start with what we mean by information and communication technologies. We then discuss why integrating these technologies into higher education is a good idea. And finally, we focus on how we can realize this integration with respect to teaching and learning approaches and global trends in education. We call information and communication technologies ICT as a short form. ICT is a huge umbrella term that embraces the many technologies which enable us to receive information and communicate or exchange information with others. ICT components include data, internet access, cloud computing, software, hardware, transactions, and communications technology. But more importantly, ICT involves the combination and application of those components. Generally, ICT refers to all devices, networking components, applications, and the systems that facilitate interaction within the digital world. Why is integrating ICT into higher education is so important? Educators are often skeptical about using technology in the classroom, as they believe technology should not drive pedagogy. However, technology is innovative, popular, and has the potential to fundamentally change many aspects of our lives. In fact, it has drastically changed how we work, how we communicate, and how we live. And in our context, what we teach and learn, how we teach and learn, and where we teach and learn, as well as the way we think about teaching and learning. Information and communication technologies are increasingly vital for higher education in terms of learning and teaching processes, evaluation, research, and so on. ICT integration in higher education is a necessity because, first of all, both learners and the kinds of skills they need in the 21st century have changed. Those who were born at the start of the century and already in the senior years of universities are called the net generation, or more descriptively, digital natives. Any child born since the beginning of this century is growing up in a digital world. Therefore, modes of teaching need to change because learners are changing by growing up in a digital world. Learners need new kinds of skills in the 21st century. An organization known widely for its analysis of skills which are required for 21st century student success in the new global economy is Partnership for 21st Century Skills. They suggest that there are three types of skills for the 21st century learners. The first one is life and career skills. The second is learning and innovation skills. And the third set is information, media, and technology skills, which cover digital literacies and which the 21st century learners must have. Abilities which are associated with digital literacies include using ICT skills to create and share information, searching, scanning, and sorting information, navigating through screens of information, locating and evaluating information, using ICT to research and solve problems, making multimedia presentations, retrieving, organizing, managing, and creating information, and sending and receiving messages. Learners and their teachers who develop the abilities to interact with the wider world, or information, media, and technology skills to be more specific, can be called digital citizens of the 21st century. ICT can also empower the three traditional strands that make up the mission of higher education institutions: research, service to the community, and teaching. Application of ICT are particularly powerful and unquestionable in higher education's research function in terms of promoting better quality research, data processing, searching text, and linking researchers globally. ICT can also help reinforce the development role of higher education institutions in their communities, an aspect of higher education's mission that is often neglected. Universities can employ ICT to play their generative and developmental roles in the society and to improve the relationships between the academic world and its community stakeholders. Given the increasingly escalating demand for higher education in developing countries, ICT is essential in higher education for improving quality, widening access, and cutting costs in the teaching function. Before discussing the question of how for ICT integration in education, let's now have a look at some pedagogical aspects regarding learning. Learning is a complex process of acquiring or developing knowledge, skills, and the attitudes, all underpinned by values. An integrated approach to learning is captured by the four pillars of learning: learning to know, learning to do, learning to be, and to live together. Keeping those 4 pillars in mind, we should actually ask the question, what is learning like in the first place? As most would agree, learning is primarily the first-person activity. Regardless of the situation, learning is ultimately the individual's responsibility. Learning will not succeed unless the individual feels a strong sense of ownership and responsibility in the process itself. Other people can certainly help us, but at the end of the day, the responsibility of learning is that of a learner. In this sense, ICT can certainly strengthen this understanding. The use of ICT in classrooms, lecture halls, and teaching labs has already changed and is still changing in the way teachers teach and how students learn. In pedagogical terms, this means a shift in teacher and learner roles. Teachers have moved from being sages on the stage to becoming guides on the site. The teacher is no longer the all-knowing authority. We can think of the new role as a team coach or the conductor of an orchestra. In the same way, learners can adopt more active roles, especially by means of ICT. They can participate in virtual teams and be active researchers, searching the web for information, to complete individual or group projects, and also communicating via emails, blogs, and social networking with students and teachers in other schools, and finally reaching conclusions on the basis of evidence gathered. Despite these expected benefits, on the other hand, ICT integration in higher education should be carefully planned by including not only ICT experts but also curriculum development experts, so that the process does not turn out to be simply a repackaging of previous pedagogy. Current trends tell us that technology needs to be integrated into pedagogy and the practice of teaching and learning across all levels of education. It's no longer good enough to employ ICT simply as a communicative instrument or to have students do research on the internet. And an effective curriculum adopts a transformative ICT integration. Now, that leads us to our next question. How do we effectively integrate ICT into higher education? This process is easier said than done because faculty members should acquire specific kind of language that we call technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge. TPAC is the integration of content, pedagogy, and technology. It goes beyond expressing these things in isolation and lies at the intersection of these 3 knowledge bases, allowing the creative repurposing of traditional approaches. The TPAC framework explains how content, what is being taught, and pedagogy, how the instructor conveys that content, must be at the heart of any successful ICT integration. This is significant because, in order to improve students' learning experiences, the technology being adopted must communicate the material and complement the pedagogy. If we think about the process of learning and teaching at schools, colleges, or universities, there are 4 major dimensions to it. One is communication, another is content, because you must have a content to communicate. Then we assess it, whether it is learned or not, and we manage this whole process. These 4 aspects are content, communication, assessment, and class management. We can effectively deal with 4 components with the help of ICT. Content can be designed, developed, and created using videos, using podcasting, and it also can be communicated. How do we communicate it with learners? It can be communicated with many tools. One example given here is sharing the content blogging or vlogging. Communication also can be managed through learning management systems or content management systems. Assessment can be done using recent trends like e-portfolios, rubrics, or clicker applications. And there are many tools such as hardware or software tools available to teachers if they decide to use information and communication technologies. This also tells us about various other aspects of teaching learning process. Let's take reflection as an example. When we are talking about, say, e-portfolio, it's not only a collection of what a learner has done. Basically, it's a reflection of how the learner learns and what the process of learning is like for that individual. Those reflections form a critical part of e-portfolio. Communication through blogs and other ICT tools also allow us to build learning communities. So, learning communities become a part of the communication of your content. While communicating, if we are involving people, we are creating a community, which means we want to collaborate. In a face-to-face classroom, this gets restricted. But if we are using ICT, information and communication technology tools, then cooperation and collaboration is definitely possible across the world. Finally, considering what ICT can offer for improving the efficiency of learning and teaching process and the fundamental dynamics of project-based learning, we can clearly suggest that ICT and project-based learning is a perfect match, because ICT can certainly help learners access real-world data, collaborate at a distance, visualize and analyze data, and create multimedia presentations of their results, which we will discuss in another session.